Shauna, welcome to the Success Money Mindset podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I get to talk about success, money, mindset, and taxes, my favorite thing. So I'm so excited to be here.
I feel like I should change my episode. I should change the title of my podcast to Success Money Mindset and Save Money on Taxes just for this one episode.
Oh, you're
That
so
would be.
sweet. I love it.
So I'm super excited for this conversation. I know we chatted a little bit offline, and what you do is so incredible. And I know that every single advisor listening to this episode is going to be chomping at the bit for like, how do I help my clients save money on taxes? So that's exactly where I want to start. I would love for you to break down for us, how can advisors help clients save money on taxes? Now, that is a very broad question, and I know that there's probably a lot of different directions you can go, but I'd love to start there. And of course, we can dig a little bit deeper.
Absolutely. My very first answer to a very broad question is to ask questions.
Yes.
Now, there's a million different, as you said, a million different paths that you can go when you're asking questions. I mean, the first one is, who do you have on your team? So obviously you have me, the financial advisor, right? You have you. Do you have a CPA? Do you have a tax planning CPA? Because that's different than a CPA. Do you
Okay.
have a tax strategist, which is completely different than a tax planning CPA and a CPA, right? Do you have a bookkeeper? Do you have an estate attorney? Like who is on the team? Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that we see often is people, they start out life, they start building some money, they get their financial advisor. Maybe they have a CPA, a tax preparer. Okay. But that tax preparer is hyper focused on doing the returns, right? Checking the right box, filling in the forms. Maybe they're a tax planning CPA, kind of bringing up like, hey, we should buy that car you always wanted, or we should put some money into a 401k,
Yeah.
kind of what we call the baby basic, low hanging fruit kind of strategies.
Yeah.
Very unlikely that they actually have a strategist. There's only 607 of us in the entire US that are certified as strategists.
Wow.
So it's pretty rare, yeah, to find out that a client already has a strategist on their team.
Yeah.
Now, that's the first question. Who's on the team? Second question is, what do you want the money for? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So some people are hyper focused on retirement, right? Like I want to retire, they're FIRE, financial independence, retire early. They want to be retired at 35 or 40 or whatever that age is. You get other people that want to pay for a first house and a car and school for each one of their kids, right?
Yeah.
You get other people that are highly focused on charity, right? They want to do donations. Maybe they tithe. I've seen clients put away as high as 75% of their income into charitable requirements, into what they felt that they wanted to do.
Wow.
So how does somebody want to use the money is also a really important question. And it actually kind of leads which tax strategies, which kinds of things you would even bring to the attention of a client, because
Yeah.
somebody that's really into charity versus somebody that's all about the money and keep it for myself and have a huge retirement pile, two very different clients, and both are valid, right? It just depends on who you are. So
Yeah.
for me, those are kind of the two very first questions to ask. Who's on the team and what do you want the cash for?
Yeah.
So
I love that. So I would love to dig a little bit deeper. So if I'm an advisor and I'm sitting with a client and a client is like, hey, Scotty, I want to save money on taxes, or that's something that the advisor is like, hey, I know you want to save money on
you're
taxes.
paying too much. Let's get it down.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
You're paying too
period.
much. There's probably low hanging fruit. There may be areas of opportunity. And then let's say the client asks the advisor asks the client, hey, who do you have on their team? And they're like, oh, I have a CPA. What is the question the advisor can ask to distinguish whether or not it's a CPA, a tax strategist? Because clients may not actually know. They might not know the difference.
No
If an
clue.
advisor doesn't know the difference, I doubt a client does.
No clue. Now, what I can tell you is a client that has a strategist knows they have a strategist.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So if
Yes.
they answer, oh, yeah, I've got a strategist and a tax preparer, we're
Then they
good.
know.
This is a
Got
good
it.
thing. Right.
Yep.
But you're right. When there's only 607 strategists, including myself, in the entire country, it's pretty rare that you get that answer. Right.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to find out what kind of CPA this person has. Okay. So when the client says I have a CPA, great. What do they do for you? So what's the
Yeah.
first question? If the client says, well, they take my information, they prepare my return, or they do my bookkeeping, then they do the return. That is your basic CPA. We love them. We need them. There's according to Google, 660,000 CPAs in the
Oh,
US, right? So those are the most common. Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
If the client says, well, yeah, they do all that stuff, bookkeeping and payroll and do my tax returns, but last year they also told me about the pass-through entity tax and he saved me $10,000. Oh, that's great. Okay. If that CPA told about 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 strategies, they're probably the next level, which is a tax planning CPA.
Got
So
it.
they do basic, what we would consider as a strategist, what we would consider basic planning, right? They're doing that low-hanging fruit. They're paying most common strategies you hear, buy equipment or buy a car, right?
Yep.
Maybe you'll hear about something called cost segregation if you're in real estate. You'll hear about paying the kids, okay? You might hear about that pass-through entity tax, okay?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll help you form an entity. So like if you have a small business and you're not an LLC, maybe they form an LLC, tax you as an S Corp. So some of these are kind of these are tax planning level kind of strategies. There's typically about 20 of them
Okay.
that are very kind of common, I would say, across tax planning CPAs.
Yeah.
And then when you start getting up into a tax strategist, there are, at least we look at a little over 1,800 strategies for every single
Wow.
client.
Got it.
So yeah. And a part of this as an advisor, when you're asking the client, well, what has this person done for you? A strategist, just to give you an example, use myself as an example, we spend about 12 to 16 months writing a custom plan for every single client. You will hate us, and we tell clients this, you will hate us for the first 3 months because we ask 10 billion questions, billion with a B, okay?
Yeah.
In order for us to know who you are, what you want, how you like your hot chocolate, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to know everything down to what kind of dog do you own? How big is it? Is it trained? What's your favorite color of socks? Is a literal question that we ask people because there's a tax strategy related to that question. So, right, that face.
Yeah.
Right. So when you speak to a client as a financial advisor, when you speak to a client, the client goes, oh, I have a strategist. She asks me 10 billion questions. Good. He's got a strategist. That's good. That's what you
Yeah.
want. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That is so helpful. So I think the takeaway that I'm gathering, because being an advisor myself for years, and again, working with a lot of clients, I think clients, and you may have more experience on this, I think most people think that a CPA is a tax strategist. I think
100%.
people think that CPAs, oh, my CPA is there to save me on taxes. And that's not the
It's not
reality.
their job. It's not their job. Their job is to fill out the forms, check the right box, and make sure you don't go to jail. Those are
Yeah.
really like their 3 jobs. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think it's really important for every advisor here to kind of take that information away to say, okay, when I go into conversations with my clients, I need to challenge them. They're like, oh yeah, I have a tax strategist. No, you don't. You probably have a
Tell me what they do. Tell me.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love that basically it sounds like there's 3 categories. Let me know if I understood this correctly. So the category 1 is, my CPA or my accountant does my taxes for me. All right, cool,
Perfect.
great.
Yeah.
Level 2, they are handling some of the preliminary things. Hey, you should buy a car over this weight limit and you'll get a tax deduction. Hey, if you incorporate this company, then you can save some money, pass through entity tax, blah, blah, blah. There's about 20 or so of those baseline things. And so if they're doing some of that, then they have some relevancy of tax strategy. And
They're like a tax planning, right? It's like
then,
your year-end tax planning. Maybe you meet twice a year, and they're
yes,
trying to do something, which is
yes,
good. Those people are really handy to have. So
yes.
yeah,
Yep. And then the third layer is the person like you that annoys your client. I'm just kidding. Ask them a billion questions to really
yes,
understand of the 1,800 possible ways that you could get deductions, making sure you're maximizing that.
you got it. And which of the 1,800 strategies do you need? Because going
Yes.
back to the original client, right? There's strategies for charitable people, but if you're not a charitable person, I'm not going to give you charitable strategies. Why would I do that? It doesn't make any sense. So
Right.
yeah.
That I'm so glad you explained that, because one of the questions that I kind of had in my mind coming into this conversation is like, how does Shauna know how to save me money on taxes if she doesn't know all the details about my life? And then you answered it by saying, I ask you every single question about your life. I was like, okay, this
Yes.
makes sense. I'm putting two and two together now.
I love it. Well, and you really have to, because if we as strategists, if we don't know what you want, you're
Yeah.
going to get the 20 basic things that apply to everybody, right?
Yeah.
If you have a business, you buy a car. I mean, like, and so that's one of the biggest differences between that strategist and the planner is really
Yeah.
the depth and the detail of what they know about you. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
When you're thinking about clients that you work with versus what a tax planner would work with, is there a threshold that you would recommend? So if an advisor is talking to somebody and they make $80,000 a year and they're a W-2 employee, I'm going to guess that that's probably not the right person for a tax strategist.
Oh.
So I would love if there's like a certain like, hey, if you're making less than this, or if you have this less than this assets, or you're W-2, or whatever the qualifications might be, you're fine with a CPA versus you're fine with a tax planner versus you're best for a strategist.
100%. So the way I like to look at it, three cutoffs, right? The way I like to look at it, your basic CPA is good if you are simple. Now,
Okay.
simple can mean a lot of things, right? It could mean you're just a W-2 with a home mortgage. Simple could also mean that you have a small business, but you've been running it for 20 years. The numbers never change. Everything's the same. You're happy with what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because going to all the way up to a strategist level, I'm going to put you to work, baby. Right? Like, I mean, all those questions, all that data, I'm going to give
Yeah.
you some things you're going to have to do.
Hmm.
So if you're simple from that standpoint, generally a standard CPA is going to work just fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that could be, you could be making $100 million in a W-2 and still be simple,
Yeah.
because it just is what it is. It's so, to me, that's more about simplicity. With a tax planning CPA, typically this is where I've seen a more established business. They are maybe making 200,000 to 500,000 or 700,000, worth of net take home, right? So
Yeah.
this is their net take home at the end of the day. They want to do something. So this is more about the client, right? They are getting to the point of being, excuse my pet language here for a second, getting really pissed off at
Yeah.
the federal government. I don't want to pay 35% anymore. I'm tired of it, right? I want to use that money for me. We've all seen, and not trying to get political, but we've now seen all the articles coming out about the spending that's been happening that shouldn't have been happening, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of people that are really upset about that. And like, well, I've been giving you 35% for 20 years. It's my turn for my money and I
Yeah.
want to keep it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the cutoff to then move to a strategist is typically where your taxable income every year hits about $1 million.
Okay.
That's really where you have, because doing some of the strategies, it takes some cash to do some strategies, right? Some of it's investments, some of it's moving stuff from pocket to pocket between different
Yeah.
businesses. So you've got to have some cash availability, you got to have some cash flow.
Yeah.
Generally, having a business makes it a lot easier to do strategies. But
Yeah.
for example, you mentioned somebody like, if you are $1 million W-2, there are absolutely strategies for you as well, right? Different kinds of strategies for W-2 than a business owner. So
Yeah.
I would say the cutoff of those brackets, the bottom one is simplicity. The middle one is, I'm annoyed and I want to keep some, but I'm not terribly big. And then the strategist is $1 million and you want to get it down. Our average tax rate for our clients is 6.92%.
Wow.
So, right. Yeah. Actually, the book just came out it's about a year old. I need to write another one, but this is the 6% life. So it's on Amazon if anybody needs it. But,
Yeah.
yeah. So if your tax rate is higher than 6.92% and you're making $1 million, you're talking tax strategist. So,
Yes. Got it. Wow. That's so helpful. Thank you for breaking that down. So I think the next logical question that an advisor might be thinking, or when they're in a conversation with somebody, and from my perspective, this is a huge value add for them to have a resource like you or another tax strategist in their life that they can then send a client to, right? So you're talking to, let's say, advisors do a lot of prospecting, right? So they're out there, they're talking to people, networking events, calling, LinkedIn, whatever that might be. They meet somebody that makes 1.3 million, let's just say, and they're running a business and it's a small business, but it's growing rapidly. And the person is sitting there and the advisor's like, hey, I want to help you with taxes. But obviously, like setting up a SEP IRA or a 401k is only one component of the puzzle
Right.
they can help
100%.
with.
Yeah.
So my question is how, I'll just ask the question. You can let me know if this is the right way of asking it. How do you integrate with a CPA? So like when they are like, oh, the client's like, I already have a CPA. And you're like, well, actually, I listened to a podcast with Scotty and Shauna, and that's not quite accurate. You have a tax planner that does your preparation, but you don't
Yeah.
have a strategist. How can somebody loop you in? What would be the process that you would recommend an advisor share with their client to say, actually, would you tell them like, hey, let me see your tax return. Let's see what your tax bracket was. Like, I guess how would you kind of make that
I can even
tangible for them?
start. Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the very first things that we see, just to kind of lay this as a groundwork here, one of the very first things that we see is CPAs will often, I'm going to call it fight for territory. Okay.
Yeah.
They get very nervous when it's financial advisors. Well, why are you talking to another financial advisor? I can help you with that. We all, I mean, it's just human nature, right? That we all get a little territorial about our clients, and we want to make sure they're safe and, all these kinds of good things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the questions when you're talking to somebody, hey, okay, you've got that CPA, great. So have they given you any planning, like of any kind? Like you're trying to judge who do they have on their team, right? And if they come back and they say, listen, got a CPA, I've been with them for 20 years. Either they gave me planning 5 years ago, it saved me some money, but they haven't given me anything since. We hear that a lot. Or they give me something, like generally the answer is, I love them. They do a great job at the tax returns, but I'm not 100% happy. And so often your client, when you bring up the subject and you start to kind of ask these questions, often the client will say, why? Is there something else? Like often the client will bring it up. If the client does not bring it up, you can bring it up and say, hey, listen, listening to this podcast, right? And looked at your tax rate. You're paying about 33% right now. There are strategies out there that can get you legally above board, because it's always the big, like we're not going to jail. We'll talk about the aggression scale here in a minute, but
Yeah.
we're not going to jail. But there are strategies that are legal above board that can get you closer to 15%, 20%. Like I'm not the expert, but I've got an expert. Is
Yeah.
that something you're interested? I mean, it's a little bit of work, but is that something you'd be interested in, finding legal ways to reduce your taxes?
Yeah.
Generally, that answer is going to be yes. not all, because some people want that simplicity, and that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool, right?
Yeah.
But so to me, that's always kind of the first way to even bring up the subject. Generally, if the client's going to say, yeah, like I'll take 15%, how do we do that? Right? Okay, well, listen, I've got relationships with 1, 2, 3, because as an advisor, in my opinion, you should always have a couple of people for anything that you're ever going to refer.
Yeah.
Right. So as I mentioned, there's 607 people in the entire US that are certified. I don't know if you guys can see all my titles: the CPA, Masters in Tax, CTC, CTP, CTS. Those are the certifications. CTC is the lowest, CTP is the medium, CTS is the top. There's only 15 of us, and I'm in the top 3. They refuse to tell us who's number 1, I know, which is very annoying. But to a numbers girl, I'm like, hello, I want to know. But CTS, if you ever find a CTS, those are the top of the top of the top of the top of the strategy world, right?
Got it.
So, for depending on the size of your client, if you have for example, we were just working with a client, it was him and 5 partners, sold a $225 million partnership, saved them about $112.4 million on their sale. I mean, very happy. You want to find a CTS for that level of issue. Okay. If you've got somebody making $1 million, CTC is going to be just fine. So find other CTC, CTP, CTS, find other ones of us, make a couple of relationships, and as a financial advisor, talk to them. Okay. Because
Yeah.
just like any human to human, you may find that you connect better with one than somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm a fiery redhead, right? And my team kind of pulls off a little bit. I mean, tax goddess, could you tell by the name? Anyway, there's a personality that goes along with our office. Some
Yeah.
clients like that, some clients don't.
Yeah.
I remember many years ago, somebody got offended that I called myself a goddess, and because of religious things. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I understand we're probably not the right fit for you. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it very much just depends. But I would recommend that you have at least two, right? People to refer.
Yeah.
Of course, Tax Goddess would be happy to chat with you if you need that.
Yeah.
But then you can give your client, listen, I've got people, these are the statistics. Because once you build a relationship with a strategist, a good strategist will be able to tell you their statistics. Like I
Yeah.
can tell you mine off the top of my head. We're at
Yeah.
a little over 1.8 billion in savings. Average tax rate is 6.92. On average, we save about $183,000 per year in taxes.
Wow.
So, a good strategist should have those numbers like right away, or at
Yeah.
least be able to pull up a report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, I'm making some notes so that I can include it in the show notes
I'm
because
so
like
sorry.
this is gold. And then I forget that we all have all these AI note takers that'll probably do it for me. But you know what? Old habits die hard. That's
Good thing.
okay. So to make sure I understood correctly,
Yeah.
recommend that advisors build relationships with about 2 to 3 or more of these tax strategists. Again, there's only
Yes.
600 or so in the US.
Correct.
So it's not going to be that hard to find a couple. I don't know how busy I'm assuming you guys are pretty busy.
People tend to like what we do. We're kind of busy,
Yeah,
but it's
people tend
good.
to
It's
like
good.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so really the CTS certification is the one that you want to be looking for if you have very complicated or like bigger kind of like, a big deal kind of person. The
Yeah.
CTC, CTP are the second tier. Sounds like it's still probably challenging to get, but it's maybe
Oh,
not
very.
quite as challenging. And so if you have people
Correct.
that are making 400,000, 300,000, maybe that's a perfect place for them to be for those types of people.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Because really, you want to find, I mean, as all financial advisors, right? And CPAs, we want to take care of our clients. It's our
Yeah.
fiduciary duty to do that, right? And to make sure
Yeah.
that they're in the best place possible. So finding the right home and the right, and you can tell even just by the terms I use, the right home,
Yeah.
right? You are their home for financial advice. They need a tax strategy home, a
Yeah.
team that they like, a team that they connect with, a team you connect with. Because
Yeah.
if you can't work together, right, one of the jobs of a good tax strategist is to pull in insurance, financial, real estate, estate and trust, corporate, just general corporate law, right?
Yeah.
So even though none of those things are necessarily tax specific,
Yeah.
if the strategist that you're talking to does not coordinate with all of those other people, your strategist could be setting up something that you look at as a financial advisor, go, why'd you tell them to do that? It's bad because of blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
Like you have
Yeah.
to be able to work together. So,
Yes. Yeah. And that's super. I totally agree. And I have a couple follow-up questions that I think advisors that might be thinking about creating partnerships with a tax strategist might be thinking. So I guess the first question that comes to mind is when, like, let's say I was going to create a partnership with you, right? And I'm like, hey, Shauna, I have hundreds of clients that I could go to and basically have conversations with them. And I'm like, hey, your tax bracket is 33%. I have somebody, are you interested? Blah, blah, blah. How does the recommendations that you make, how do they marry with the financial advisor, right? So as an advisor, most advisors are doing insurance planning. So whole life, VUL, IUL,
you
disability.
nailed it. You just answered your own question, Scott.
Okay.
No, I love it because you're right. And so again, this is why as a financial advisor, you want to be effectively interviewing the strategist, right?
Absolutely.
Because you want to make sure that the strategies that you think are good, they think are good, and both of you are coming as a united front. And I love that you bring up life insurance because strategists, I don't know, my gut, I don't have any statistics on this. My gut says that we're probably about 50-50 split. Some of us look like, I love life insurance. I think if you don't have a life insurance policy, you're shooting yourself in the foot, specifically the IULs, the infinite banking, the premium financing. I mean, there's so many cool things out there, right? That you can use to put the money in, get the growth, and then take it out and then do tax strategy. Like we get to triple dip our money. Did I miss something? But that's me going off on a soapbox. But if you like life insurance and your strategist likes life insurance, right? The way that we tend to see it work the best, okay? Client comes in making $1 million. They need tax strategy. They have no planning of any kind. Fantastic. Okay. Let's start with the lowest stuff first. Okay.
Yeah.
Get the life insurance on you, on the wife, on the kids. Yeah. Why do we not have that? Okay. Yeah. Let's go look at the retirement plans. Okay. Do you need, because they're SEP, simple IRA? Are we talking defined benefit plan? Are we talking cash balance? Are we talking 401h? Like, what's the plan? What are we doing? Right. Yeah. Those are the kinds of discussions that normally it'd be the trifecta: the client, the financial advisor, and then the strategist, and maybe the CPA. It's funny. I tend to leave the tax filing CPA out of a lot of these conversations because really their job is the end of the road.
Right.
We've all done our planning and the client, we've made all our moves, we've done everything, the year is over, then we hand it to the CPA. So the one area I do include the CPA is just make sure they're going to sign off on it. Because some CPAs, like if we look at something a little more advanced, maybe like a captive insurance company or historic preservation easements, something on the little more advanced end, the CPA filing the return may say, well, I don't know about that, and I'm not signing off on that, right? Now you have to find a new CPA. So I do like looping them in just to make sure, like, this is what we're planning to do. Are you good with that? Or do we need to find a new CPA, right?
Right. And I think I think you made a really great point earlier that things can be a little territorial. It happens with insurance agents and then advisors that focus on wealth, with CPAs and tax strategists. Like, it's just kind of par for the course. I guess my take on it, just to share my initial thoughts, is that if you have somebody on your team who is a little bit more territorial, that's a red flag. Let's just be real. Like, you need to just look at that and be like, if somebody wasn't insecure, they wouldn't have a problem with that. If they were secure in what they did for their clients and how they showed up, it's like going to a doctor and the doctor's like, here's my recommendation. Okay, I want to get a second opinion. Like, why? I'm right. It's like, okay, that's a red flag. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, why wouldn't I want to get another opinion from somebody else? Because it's that, an opinion. There's no ultimate right or ultimate wrong. So
I'm so in love with you right now, Scotty. No, 100%. Because we say the same thing. Listen, there are two kinds, and of course we look at it from the CPA world, right? Two different kinds of CPAs. If we show up as a strategist, because we don't do tax returns, I'm throwing that out there right now. We do not. Tax Goddess does not file tax returns. We don't touch them. I don't want to touch them. Like, we need the CPA on the other side, and we want two pairs of eyes looking at every strategy saying, yes, we've approved it as a strategist. Does your CPA see the logic? Do they understand why? Are they willing to sign it? To us and to you as a client, that's a double, you get a double whammy of power right there by doing that, right? Yeah. And so when we get the CPA that says, oh, that's really interesting, I've never seen that. Can I research that? Can you give me any data? We are in love. We're in absolutely. Here's the 300-page white paper on this thing, which the CPAs we all geek out on. So we're happy about that. But if you get the CPA or you get the insurance planner, the financial advisor, the attorney is, I've never seen it. We're not doing it. I haven't done it in 30 years. Dude, did you read the article that just came out 2 weeks ago? Because I read the IRS news every day, 2 times a day, and every state once a week. So that's our job as a strategist, is to know what's going on, when it's happening, what's going. So anyway, soapbox, love it.
No, we're totally on the same page, and I just think about how much value you add as an advisor when you have somebody like you on the team, because I've always found it to be so, like, advisors themselves don't have all the information. They just, like, I mean, it's just not, nobody has all of it, right? Like, it's And so if an advisor's role is to help somebody move forward in their financial journey by investing, getting closer to their goals, if you can help them save money, then the advisor looks good. And if you're aligned with the recommendations, I think there were studies that show that most clients, they trust their CPAs more than they trust their financial advisors. It's like the top most trusted financial profession. So if you're coming in as a tax strategist and you're getting paid a flat fee, right? You're not, oh, actually, I don't really know how you get compensated. So we probably should talk about that. But let's just say you're not getting compensated based on the investments, right? Because you're not investing
Right.
people's money or
Yeah.
insurance products. So there's not a
There's no incentive for us to lie to you. Why would we lie
exactly.
to the client? It would only hurt us, hurt the client, hurt you. Like, why? Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Oh,
Because
yeah.
it's all about perceived risk or perceived conflict of interest, right? An advisor could be making 100% the best recommendations, but if they get compensated on it, the client might look at that and say, "Oh, is it the best for me because X, Y, and Z, whatever it is." But if they're partnered with somebody like you and you're making the same recommendations, the clients are like, "Oh, yeah, like I don't know why, but I just feel like having you kind of like as that secondary source of
Yeah.
information would be super powerful."
Well, and as you said, right? I mean, you don't go to one doctor when you've got cancer, like you go to seven
Right.
of them and make sure everybody says, yeah, cut it out or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yes,
Like, I mean,
exactly.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so really, so to answer the question, we also work on a flat fee exactly for that reason. It's actually illegal. So this is really good for your financial advisors to know. If you
Yeah.
ever come across somebody who's got CPA in the title, right? So non-CPAs are allowed to charge a percentage of whatever they save you. But I'm with you. Like to me, that's like, yeah, but how long have you been around? And are you going to go fly by night? Like I signed this thing and
Uh,
then I get called by the IRS and you're not here. Like that always
yeah.
makes me a little nervous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But CPAs, it's actually illegal. They're not allowed. They will lose their license if they charge a percentage of savings. We're like flat out not
Yeah.
allowed.
Yeah.
So having the CPA and the strategist is like powerhouse
Yeah.
from that standpoint because again fiduciary duties not allowed to charge. We do so just because you asked. Tax Goddess has 3 separate packages
Yeah.
depending on the size, depending on complexity, and depending on what you want us to do.
Yeah.
There's a 10K package if you're a do-it-yourselfer. Now I realize I'm speaking to financial advisors and I have to give you guys hearts and props and whatever. And please, nobody hate me for saying what I'm about to say. Okay. For whatever reason, financial advisors tend to come in and say, I know how to do it. Just give me the 10K DIY. I'm going to do it myself. About 2 or 3 months later, they come back and they're like, can I bump up to the next package where you tell me what to do? I'm like, yes, of course. That's fine. We love you guys because you're smart and you're smart. And, it's anyway. So there's a 10K do it yourself. There's a 65K, which is the team is here. We guide you. We have meetings. There's like 6 meetings across a 12-month period. Make
Yeah.
sure you know what you're doing, how to do it, when to do it, run all the calculations, like do all the things for you. And
Yeah.
then if you really, really have a big thing going on, okay, and you need the goddess herself, we do have a $350,000 package. It's
Yeah.
effectively me specifically acting as, let's call it your CFO. Do
Got
this,
it.
do that, change this. I will be in your meetings with your trust attorneys. I will tell you all the things. So
Yeah.
that's typically like much bigger. Like, for example, we're working with a guy right now selling a $450 million real estate portfolio. He's
Yeah.
on that package, right? Because he needs
Yeah.
me in every meeting, talking to all the people, telling people what to do and when to do it, kind of thing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you for breaking that down. That's super helpful. And it's kind of similar when clients are like, "Oh, do you only make money when I make money?" And you're like, "No, that's a hedge fund. Like, not allowed to do that." Right. So it's really great to have that clarity. And I love that you shared that if they have CPA, they can't do that legally. So it's just nice to know because I guess the thing and this is a nice segue into it, but if somebody gets compensated based on how much money they save you, then I don't know, I would get a little worried, like how aggressive are they? So I would love to know your take on aggressiveness of saving taxes and like what that scale is. Because some people might get a little bit nervous when they think about
Oh, yeah.
saving money on taxes. And I know you said above board, but some people might not really fully grasp like what exactly that means. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the questions, if somebody decides to come work with Tax Goddess, okay, one of the very first questions we ask them is, well, where do you sit on what we coin the aggression scale? So 0 to 10.
Yeah.
0 meaning the IRS never calls, never ever, but you're leaving a bunch of money on the table. Okay. 10 meaning we're all going to jail.
Yeah, okay.
And we kind of stop right there because, side note, that's the reaction we get from literally every person that we say this to, right?
Yeah.
But it makes them think, well, okay, how aggressive do I want to be? What does that mean? So we pause for a minute, we let them think about it, okay? And then if they still haven't given us an answer, because some people will immediately be like, 20, I'll move to Belize. Like they can't get me. I'm like, Okay, I'm a redhead. Red and orange don't go well together. I'm not going to jail. Like we're not. I am a CPA. I can't do that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So 10 means we're doing illegal, like bad, going to jail, like don't pass go, all the things.
yeah, yeah,
A level 9, we always describe as Al Capone. You're doing shady stuff and hoping you don't get caught. Okay, of course, you did get caught for tax fraud, so don't do shady
yeah,
stuff either.
yeah,
An 8 is kind of the highest that tax goddess will go. Okay, an 8 means it's completely legal, completely above board. We can give you the 300-page white paper on here's everything in court cases and all of that stuff's in the backup of every strategy we give you, that kind of thing.
yeah,
But an 8 means that you might get a call from the IRS. Right.
yeah,
It just means you might have an audit and you have to hand them the 300 pages. So, some clients will say, well, listen, I don't want the call from the IRS, but I want to be aggressive as possible. You might want to be a 6 or a 7.
yeah,
You get some clients, often what happens, you get the entrepreneur that is like, give me the 20, and you get the spouse, it's like, I'm a 2.
yeah,
Right. So you end up meeting at like a 5,
yeah,
like
yeah,
somewhere,
yeah,
somewhere
yeah,
around that range.
yeah,
But yeah, it's super duper important. Again, one of the billions of questions we ask, and it's probably one of the cornerstones of what we do.
yeah,
Because if I don't know where you want to be, heaven forbid I give you a level 8 strategy and you're really a level 3, right?
yeah,
And you
yeah.
unknowingly are doing something. And so super important for us to know where you want to be.
Yeah. That's great to know that you're not going to come in and just kind of do a one size fits all for every single person and say, hey, I'm going to save you literally as much money on taxes as possible. And they might be sitting there thinking, well, if I get a call from the IRS, I'm going to be really upset. Like you're doing legal
Yep.
stuff, but the IRS still might call because if you're doing something that is at least on my understanding, correct me if this is wrong, maybe like something that's newer that it just came out, like there's a court case that happened,
100%.
and it's like something that's new, and you're like, oh, we're gonna now take this information and apply it because there's been precedents now, but like maybe nobody really knows about, maybe the IRS is still kind of figuring out how to like navigate those waters. So it's
Yeah.
legal, but it's pushing the boundaries on the relevancy, like the newness of it versus,
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy a car that's over whatever 60,000 pounds, and
Which
you're
has
like,
been around for 20 years at this
yeah,
point.
exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone knows
Yeah.
that at this point.
Yeah.
Right, right, right. Yep.
Yeah, and no, you nailed it because things change literally daily. Like I wasn't joking. There's a publication that comes out every morning and every afternoon, and it's
Yeah,
all the court cases for that day. And I
yeah,
read every single one of them that relates to one of our clients.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah,
and so we are at the forefront. A perfect example is something called historic preservation easements, HPE. Okay, they've been around for a really long time. There was no court cases, there was no guidance. People were just kind of doing what they thought was good. There was nothing. Then the IRS came out and said, guidance, as long as it's 2.5 to 1 on your return on investment, we're good with it. And immediately overnight, everything went to 2.5 to 1. And I'm like, all right,
yeah.
cool. Like they
Wow.
published it, we did it, everybody's happy.
Yeah,
So the current questions that are outstanding is, well, I had one of these things 3 years ago that was 7 to 1, but the case did an example that, so are we going to be off? We don't know. We don't know if the IRS, I mean, with the whole thing with Trump talking about killing 15,000 agents, there's a whole nother issue here. Like, are you going to be audited? Do they have the bandwidth to audit? We have clients. It's actually kind of unfortunate. Not that I want to say I love the IRS, but we have clients that we're waiting on refunds still from the ERC and all the money that happened during COVID. It's been 2.5 years. They still don't have it. So I'm a little torn on the whole. Anyway, different subject for a different day.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, it really just depends on where the client wants to be, on what do they want to do.
yeah,
And one other thing I like to bring up here, just because you are a level 7 or a level 8 doesn't mean that we need to use 7 or 8 strategies to get you to 6.92%. We
yeah,
might be able to use, and we tend to start with, let's do the zeros, let's do the negative 4s, the things your
yeah,
CPA should have been doing and never did. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
let's do those, do the zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's work our way up. Because if we can get you to the 6.92 or even less, we have quite a few clients that get to 0. If we can get you to 0, why would you do something more aggressive if you don't have to?
yeah, yeah,
So
totally. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, can you get a high yield savings account at 4.5% versus a CD at like 3%? You're like, but the high yield savings account has liquidity. That I'm just making that up, but yeah, it makes no sense why you
right.
wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I have one final question that I would love your take on, and it might be a broad question. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. So this is a lot of what we talked about is for advisors working with their clients. What about advisors that are thinking about reducing their own taxes, right? Because advisors typically run their own business. And I know there's a lot of different types of advisors. There's people at RIAs, there's people that are captive at like life insurance companies. So I would love your general take on what advisors could do in this conversation. Should they do the do yourself process with you? Like, or would you say like, hey, listen, guys, like you could, but like realistically, like 90% of people decide to like upgrade. I'm just curious to take on that.
Yeah, 100%. And let me come at the answer this way. Okay, so can you do the 10K? Of course, you guys are smart. I'm not saying you're not. If you choose to
Yes.
go that path, but would I recommend it, especially for advisors? Absolutely not. And the
Yeah.
reason why not is because advisors is a very broad term. Okay. Are you captive? Are you an RIA? Do you own your own shop? Do you have staff? Do you all of those features and functions and all those billion questions of the details of your own life
Yeah.
change the way we can do strategy. For some people, there are statutory W-2s. For some people, we can set up an S corp and have the money flow through.
Yeah.
We can break up your income from advisory stuff versus life insurance sales. That's two different streams of income. Maybe we need
Yeah.
two different businesses, one for each.
Mhm.
There's a million ways to split this kind of cake, and a lot of it is very dependent on the rules and regulations that you as an advisor, specifically in your situation,
Yeah.
get applied to you and to your circumstance. And that's nothing you guys can control. It's if you have this license, you have this set of rules.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
So very dependent on who you are. So yeah, typically for our financial advisors, our life insurance guys, go with the 65 plan, right? You
Yeah.
can, it's your choice, but like, yeah. So
Got it. And then is there again, another threshold? I guess, do the thresholds that you shared before, are they kind of similar for when the advisor should actually explore this on their own? Because again, an advisor's 3 years in business, they're making 120K. I'm guessing it's maybe not the perfect time yet to like really explore that. They might not even have enough cash flow
yeah.
to do it, really.
Yeah. So yeah, the good thing about what we do is money is money is money. It doesn't matter who's making it or what job they're making it in.
Yeah.
Right. Except for Al Capone. Like, please don't call us if you're Al Capone. Like, I'm good.
If you're doing fraud, do not reach out to Shauna, please.
Please don't call us. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, otherwise, a dollar is a dollar is a dollar. And you're right. If you're taking home about $120,000 a year, you want your basic CPA is good, but you maybe want one or two of those planning. The middle level, right? Because you're kind of at the beginning of that middle level planning level.
Yeah.
Now, if you add a couple more zeros and you're taking home 1.5 to 15, like if you're taking home some bigger dollars, yeah, if you don't have a strategist, you're leaving money on the table. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's super helpful to know. And I love that because advisors, they run their own businesses as well. And like what better recommendation can somebody make to say, hey, here are 3 strategists. I actually work with Shauna. She saved me X amount. I mean, like the relevancy of that is like a 10 out of 10 versus here are 3 strategists. I talked to them. I like them, but like, good luck, like figure it out on your own.
Figure it out. Well, and we do have, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We do have advisors that fall below the level that choose to work with us anyway, knowing that, because a big thing for me is that we will save you more than you pay us. That's always been in my heart. Like, if I'm doing a good job, I'm getting you at a minimum 3 times. I can't put any of that in writing because CPA, like I'm not allowed to say any of that, put it in writing. But, for me, that's when I know I've done a good job. Now our ROI is like 186 times. I mean, we're not anywhere near 3. Okay. But we will have advisors come work with us because they're really testing us out for their clients. Right. And that's fair. That's totally fair. We have an entire strategic partnership program. And I mean, we have, there's all sorts of things that you can do from that standpoint. So, but yeah, whoever it is you work with, even if you specifically are not in the right place to work with them yet, at a minimum, have a conversation. Go talk to some of their clients, because again, a good strategist should be like, yeah, here's the 7 people you can go call and ask them all about what we do, right? Video testimonials. Do they have any video testimonials from clients? Like, do your due diligence on who you're working with, because the one thing that will destroy your reputation is sending somebody that blows up your word, right? Your referral.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing that I tell folks as well, and vice versa, right? So like if you're an advisor and you want to get referrals from a tax strategist or a CPA or whoever, you have to make
Yeah.
sure that you're aligned with them as well. So yes, it's one thing to give referrals and you look good, but you also might want to get referrals. And so have those conversations with tax strategists and identify who would be that ideal target market and the ideal person to get from that strategist. Because again, the more specific you can be, the easier it'll be for your partner, your power partner, again, the CPA, the lawyer, whoever it is, to actually give you that referral. If you're like, I'll work with anybody, you're like, yeah, but you're like 26 and this person that I'm talking to is like 45 and selling a business. Like, I
No.
understand you could work with anybody, but that doesn't really feel authentic for me to send you that referral. But if you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I really specialize in working with people in the construction world that run businesses that make between 500 and 1.5 million. That is so specific that you can specialize and speak their language and their pain points, and getting those referrals will be easier because then when you, Shauna, talk to somebody who's like in that space, you're like, I got the advisor for you.
Oh
And you
yeah,
can send
we
them
know
to-
exactly who this is. Yeah, specialties actually help us a lot because
yeah,
good or bad, as strategists, as we mentioned earlier, there's only 607 of us, right?
yeah, crazy.
I probably get me 3 or 4 emails a day from financial advisors. I want a partner, and I'm like, this is why we have a strategic partnership department. You talk to her name's Montana. She's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
But yeah, because it is for even for us, it's about finding the right financial advisor for that client. 100%,
exactly.
right? I'm not going to send that $450 million dude. No offense, 26-year-old. I was
Yeah,
26 once too. We all were, right, at some
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah,
But you can't because it won't
yeah,
work for the client. And going back to all of our fiduciary duties, it's about what's right for the client.
yeah,
Not you, not me, not the relationship, not anything else. It's what's right for the client.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that's also that comes back to like the abundance mentality that I was referring to back with like being territorial or not territorial. Like that's the other thing, and this is like not I'm not gonna go off on a tangent here, but that's why I talk so much with my advisors about having a target market, understanding their pain points, because for this exact reason, and you're sharing it, like it's if an advisor comes to you and is like, hey Shauna, I would love to work with your clients, you're like, what do I do with you, kid? Like what am I supposed to like
Which clients? I don't, yeah.
hundreds, thousands of people I work with. How am I supposed to be able to support you with that? I've one. I know I said one last question, but I do have another.
You can ask me, we're good. It's all good.
There's many questions. I just find it so fat. I love talking about this stuff. I think I understand this, but I just want to get clarity. So when you work with somebody, so let's say they do your middle package, the 65 one, they do your middle package, that the strategies you put together are going to help them save money on taxes into perpetuity in the future, right? It's not just
Yes.
like 1 year and then they have to like
Oh no.
re-up it and continue, right?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah. No,
correctly?
you nailed it. Yeah. So we charge a one-time fee. Okay. And now caveat, okay. We had a guy, love the man. He calls us, tells us he's going to have 100 doors, right? Rental properties, right? This was the goal. This was the dream. We wrote the plan. 3 years later, he calls me from Belize, okay, which is why Belize always sticks in my head. Calls me from Belize, says, I sold it all. And my first question was, without talking to me? You did what? Anyway, sold it all, moved to Belize, bought 3 ice cream shops, and now he needs a new plan. I'm like, all right, listen. Yeah, you're not just getting a plan. There will be a separate fee. It's a completely different scenario, right? Like we're going to do the thing. But
Yeah.
for most people, that's not what happens, right? For most people, it's here's my business. I've been doing it 20 years. I'm just I'm paying too much in tax, and I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So we write the plan. Now, typically, they're good for let's say 3, 5, 7 years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are not in control of that, right? If Trump, for example, there's a bill in the House right now. If that passes, that's going to change a whole bunch of tax strategies, ones that we maybe just delivered 2 weeks ago, right? So one of the things that we do is when there are tax law changes, we send updates to every client we've ever had in the past and said, here's all the updates, right? Please at least review them. If you have
Yeah.
questions on any of these, reach out. Because you
Yeah.
do have, at least with our packages, you get 3 years of follow-up service. So if there's a question, if something tweaks, if something changes, if it's minor, we'll just answer it. If you move to Belize, I'm going to charge you. Just telling you in advance. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there you go.
totally.
So
Okay, that's super. I'm glad I got clarity on that. That was probably clarity for me. I don't know if anybody else was thinking that, but that was something that I was like, I'm just curious because, honestly, I'm thinking about working with you. Like, I fall into your middle. Not at the moment making hundreds of millions of dollars, but I'm certainly above like the $600,000
Let's save you
threshold.
some money,
So
Scotty. That's like
I'm
the whole
like,
point.
and I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, I could buy a car, but like, what are the other strategies I need to know?
Let's
Well,
go
actually,
play. I
let me
love
rephrase
it.
that. I don't need to know. I need them to be implemented. I don't need to know
Well, you
them.
know what, Scotty, though, that right there is a super important distinction because
Yeah,
we do have clients, and so I'll warn everybody listening right now, okay? We are coaches, strategic tax coaching, okay?
yeah,
Our
yeah,
job is to tell you what to do, when to
yep,
do it, how to do it. But if the
yeah,
client themselves, whether it's you or your client or whatever, doesn't actually do them,
yeah,
we can't save any money because I
totally.
can't open a business. I can't open a new bank account. There's
Yeah,
certain things I cannot do for you. So
yeah,
that's probably the only other, I would say, qualification when we are looking at whether we'll work with somebody
yeah,
is do they have the grit, the gumption, the drive to actually do the work?
totally.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but yes, Scotty, I have an odd feeling you'd be just fine. So
Yeah, and it's such a great point, and I love your perspective on it also that I think people could take away. This is unrelated to taxing, but to taxes, but it's this idea that you're also qualifying your clients, right? Like if you're
100%.
an advisor or like again, I run a consulting company and I help advisors, and if I talk to an advisor and I'm like, this person would be a pain in my butt, they're not going to get results, they're not going to do it. I'm like,
No.
no, it's a
Yeah.
hard no. Like I don't care how much money they're going to pay me because they're going to walk away from the situation, not get what they want. I'm not going to feel good. It's going to be a no. And you can
Everybody's upset.
see
What's the point?
it's yeah, and you
Yeah.
have a couple extra dollars in your bank account that you might even refund them anyway because you're like, just get out of my life. Here's your money.
Yes. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, if you don't have your own list of red flags, it's
Yeah,
probably the one piece of homework I would give to every listener from here. I
yeah.
give people a lot of homework, sorry. Ex-teacher, I taught for like a while.
I'm
Anyway,
here.
whatever.
I'm here. Yeah,
Homeworks. Write out your list of red flags, right? I love
yeah,
the PETA, right? The pain in the ass. They don't return phone calls. The one somebody told me when I very first started my business was if you look at your phone and you see that name and you go, like, no,
yeah, yeah.
no,
Hard
just
pass.
drop it, get rid of them.
Yeah,
They are
yeah.
never worth the money, never ever. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Very, very good recommendation for every business owner listening to this. As hard as it might be, even if you're early on to say no, but I tell everybody when you say no, it is very empowering. It
Yeah.
feels so good. Not because you're being mean, but because you're holding a boundary.
Yeah. And if they're not the right fit for you, they know they're not the right fit for you. They may be having the same feelings, but like,
Yeah.
whatever they were a referral, you want to make them happy, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
No, work with the people that you love, and then you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Shauna, where can people go to find you? So I'll put it in the show notes, but I would love for you to share verbally where people can go to learn more about you, potentially work with you, refer you business, like where can they go?
Absolutely. So super easy to find taxgoddess.com.
Easy.
I was thrilled when that website was available. I was very happy about that. So yeah, just taxgoddess.com. You'll see you can book a consultation. I believe in the top right-hand corner, like if you want to be a partner, there's a drop down, or if you want to be a
Yeah.
client, there's a drop down.
Yeah.
So just pick one of those two, reach out. You won't be speaking direct with me. I got a team,
Yeah.
but I'm always in the background.
Yeah.
Right. So yes.
You're always managing and kind of
Yes, the benefits of having a goddess, right? I make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So all the good
yeah,
bits.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. This was so insanely helpful, even just for me. Like I was asking questions that I was genuinely curious about. So I feel like every advisor is going to walk away from this. And first of all, you're going to get a lot of people inquiring. I know for sure. But secondly, I think advisors will be able to take this information and apply it in their business to be more impactful and to be more relevant to their clients. So I really do appreciate your time and your energy and your insight.
Thank you. You have asked some, I'm even speechless. Oh my goodness. You have asked some amazing questions. And I want to say thank you because a lot of what you've asked me is very rarely pulled out of the depths of my mind. So thank you so much for being such a great host.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, everybody. I will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you again, Shauna, and we'll talk soon.
All right.